Welcome to this month's Salute to Service, and with me today I have Army U.S. veteran Bryan Bowman. Bryan, how you doing?
Good.
Welcome
Thank you.
to the show. So, aside from being an Army veteran, which is probably the best thing you can do, is you are also the Veterans Coordinator for Representative Gonzalez here in the county. And then I know you're also the Chief Executive Officer for the SAM Center, right?
Yes, board president and CEO for the SAM Center down in Massillon.
Not a Medina resident, but I wanted to have you on the show because aside from being a veteran, I know you work closely with a lot of vets around here as the Veterans Coordinator for Representative Gonzalez. So let's talk about you a little bit, though. Where are you originally from?
Canton, Ohio.
Canton, Ohio. So you're kind of in the area your whole life a little bit, right?
Born and raised, pretty much stayed in the area except for military training and going away for that.
And when did you join the Guard?
1995, just out of high school. Actually, 2 weeks out of high school, I decided to enlist.
Mm-hmm. And how long were you in the National Guard for?
21 years.
21?
So I did the 20 plus the bonus year.
Uh-huh.
And then...
and so you got to retire?
Yes.
So hitting 60, you'll get your retirement, right?
Yes.
Good.
Yep. It was a fight the last 5 years because I injured my back and just kind of coasted back and forth with it. But it was a good time and glad to be retired.
What did you do in the Guard?
I did human resources and food service.
Okay. So mostly back here in Ohio, any deployments or anything like that?
No. Well, the deployments were actually still back here in Ohio. Spent 18 months rear detachment, assisting the families and different programming. Official title was strange because it was a rear detachment commander, but I was an NCO.
Okay.
We lost our readiness NCO, our first sergeant, commander, and supply sergeant just prior to deployment.
Wow. So
and
you
I was
took
the only
over.
one who knew readiness and supply. So I ended up staying rear detachment and worked with the families the entire time.
And I could tell you, I was an assistant rear detachment over in Germany for a while. I could tell you that is a thankless job at some point sometimes. Because you're dealing with a lot of problems that you don't necessarily aren't trained to deal with. And a lot of people want answers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So my hat goes off to you.
Yeah, and that actually prepared me, I think, for my future and what I do now and everything. Because working with the families, finding assistance programs that were local, everything that those, I think there was 165 soldiers.
Right.
So everything that they went through over there during that 18 months, a lot of times I had to try to find assistance, work with the Red Cross, work with local nonprofits, organizations.
So was that prior to the RIFSACs too?
Yes,
Okay.
That was prior to RISFAC. Actually, RISFAC started up, I think, 6 months into that deployment.
Okay.
And then a lot of the things when they were starting up that Diane Wutmau and Joyce were doing in North Canton, I was working with them because they were still trying to get a feel for what was going on. The Blue Star Moms started the Akron Canton chapter right about that time. I think they started in June of 2006. So a lot of the programming we did there. We started a independent nonprofit, Friends of the Infantry, that ended up helping out because we raised building supplies, funds, books, everything to rebuild 3 schools over in Coastville.
Wow. Yeah.
So we utilized the nonprofit for that. And I'm trying to think of some of the other. It was a good experience. Ended up becoming the Ohio Military Liaison of the Year that year. Just trying to, literally my job was to try and find programming for veterans.
Try to answer people's questions.
Yes, answer people's questions. Try to figure out what to do with all the Girl Scout cookies.
Right.
I think we ended up with 90 some cases of Girl Scout cookies because everyone brought Girl Scout cookies to us, and I built walls out of cases of Girl Scout cookies.
I don't think most people realize, when the Army deploys in active duty, there is a huge support structure for those families back there on base. But prior to, probably about 2004, 2005, maybe even a little bit later, there was no support structure really for the National Guard and the Reserve families. When your Guard unit deploys, you got families spread out all over across the state. It's not like they all live in one community. And they have the same problems now of all those folks that have all the answers on an active duty base. Yeah. And they're calling you probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those were all the calls that I got. And we were trying to figure out how to keep them together.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of programming events for the kids.
And some of those questions and problems are not military related. How do I get my car fixed? My child care person just, closed up and I need child care and I got to go to work. My checking account got closed and my husband's on the check, whatever. I need a new power of attorney, things like that. Haven't heard from my husband in 2 weeks.
Healthcare emergencies.
Yeah.
It ran the gamut. Even soldiers wanting to not being able to read books to their kids at night.
Right.
Where we literally sent them a DVD recorder that had mini DVDs, and they'd
Right.
read the book and send the DVD and books back. It's a lot of things you don't think about. So it's when the tragedy happens at home, but then also that the kids are growing up, so they have a lot of issues, and dad's no longer reading to them, or just simple things, and then like complicated things when a loved one passes, or they go through that as well.
How do I get in touch with the Red Cross, things like that. Yeah,
Yep.
It's amazing.
How to coordinate all of that.
Well, you had said that sets you up kind of for what you do right now, and looking at, I know what you do right now. I mean, it really did, because you still deal with people's problems and issues and things like that. Let's talk a little bit about what you do as a veterans coordinator for one of the congressmen. Every congressman has somebody like you. I happen to think you're one of the best. Not because of who you work for, but because of you. You do a great job. You're a very caring, passionate person when it comes to helping our veterans. And I'm sure your boss, Representative Gonzalez, wants you to do that too. But what is your job in that office to help veterans?
I think the main part of the job is just do what's needed.
Right.
But the job entails where there's a lot of casework. So VA healthcare, problems with VA healthcare, VA compensation, awards requests, anything to do when you run into a problem with the federal government.
Right.
And it has to do with veteran services. That's the basic underlying job. And then what we do, which is I think is a little different, is we analyze all the areas throughout the district, every zip code. We try to find out there's an area in Parma that has a lot of World War II veterans. So we do a lot of pension programming up there, Veterans History Project, to interview them, to get their story, aid in attendance. And then we'll also do some events with the VA up there to see if they need adaptive housing, adaptive equipment. We do, and also looking at those numbers, and because most veterans don't know what's out there, the resources that's available. This year we're doing 5. It's a veterans mobile tour. We're bringing all the services into one location.
So, and I don't think most people realize this, but if I call the VA and want to bring them in, they may or may not come, and typically they will because we work well with the VA. But when a congressman calls and says, I want to have an event, and I want to have somebody from Medicare there, or I want to have somebody from the VA there, they have to come, more or less.
Yeah, they don't have to. We've only been turned down once.
Right. And it's probably because of programming or something like that.
And that's just there are other events going on.
So the government has to answer a request from you also. So when someone comes in and starts a congressional and says, I want to know about my VA claim, and I'm going to talk VA claims because that's what we do, you necessarily can't get the VA to make a decision, but the VA has to answer you as to what the process is and where that is in the process.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they'll have a conversation with us. Legally, we can't do any paperwork. We can't assist with any paperwork filing the claim. But we can ask. There's actually a congressional team that does nothing but answer to members of Congress. We can ask them what's going on with the claim, why it was denied, why it's taking a while. We can request that it be expedited for certain reasons. Of course, that's financial hardship, medical, if there's something going on.
The same ones that would normally, that someone told the VA they should,
Yeah, and if the VA, for whatever reason, isn't processing that, we see that a lot where individuals will put in the documentation for financial hardship, but the VA doesn't flag it.
Right.
So when we resubmit that, we work to ensure that it is flagged. Then we go back and double check on it.
I think a lot of times it goes in, and if they're not scheduled to look at that, nobody sees it.
Then they don't look at it.
It doesn't get seen.
It literally goes to another state, gets scanned in, that documentation goes in there. It could be 30, 60 days before they even look at the request for a hardship.
I know when we send them in, I usually wait about a week to make sure it's in there, and then I go in and make sure somebody's going to look at it. So that brings me to another thing. A lot of people think, well, hey, I called my congressman and he got my claim granted. That's not necessarily true either. But you, yeah. So you can't change the VA's mind, but you can get them to make a decision. I know that.
Correct. We can't affect the decision.
Right.
So if the claim was going to be denied, it would still be denied, or if it was going to be approved.
And me and you've worked a lot together on things, and I know I tell people, I say, well, look, it's kind of like sometimes there's a bump, and your claim gets stopped there, and I can't get it moving. Nobody. So if we go to one of the congressional representatives, they can at least get it bumped over the hump, whether we like the decision or not. You get it moving sometimes, and that's like that with awards and anything, really.
Yeah, and the national queue with what they're doing now, it's really strange because it'll end up on 4 or 5 people's desks,
right?
And it goes back into, you can call it the cloud, and it'll sit there, but then they'll bring it back down. Someone will look at it and just request one document. Then it's another 30 days.
Right. Yeah, I think the national queue, a lot of people don't like it, and a lot of people do like it. I mean, I got to say, the claims are much quicker than they were at the 2-year mark a few years back. 140 days, they're meeting their goals on about 90%. So
if everything's there, it's going faster because it's going next desk.
Yeah.
Where it becomes problematic is individuals that submit their own claim.
Right.
They don't have all the documentation. Then you'll see several requests for 30 days.
Now, you said when individuals submit their own claim, right?
Correct.
All right, so that's why you want to come to somebody like me or an accredited representative to submit
Always
your claim.
go to a veteran service officer, someone who knows how to submit the claim, and someone who will get you the documentation. Because just saying I have hearing loss without any documentation,
right.
They're going to start requesting the documentation. It goes back.
Or not
and
checking
forth.
a block, then they're sending a letter that throws 30 days onto it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you want to at least sit down and talk to somebody about the pros and cons. And if you don't feel comfortable with that person, find somebody else that's accredited. But doing your claim on your own is not a good answer. What else? So what else? I know you work with the VA, but some other agencies, National Personnel Records Center.
National Personnel Records Center. We usually get military files, medals back within 30 days, and we do a lot of presentations. I'll go into nursing facilities, senior living centers, talking to the veterans groups there. We found, in the past 6 years, had a few dozen World War II veterans that never received their medals.
Right.
Especially with, for whatever reason, Navy World War II veterans. It's probably about 20% of the time that they ever received the correct medals on their DD-214 to begin with.
Well, I've always heard that a lot. I mean, was there 10 million guys getting out back then or something? I don't know.
It was. They expected, I think it was something like 1.5 million.
Yeah.
And
So there was a lot of the
like
medals just weren't even made,
And it was war production, and then they turned the switch and they brought everyone home. Yeah. And the medals weren't produced.
Weren't even there,
and they're just trying to out-process everyone. They didn't go through the record. And if you changed units, a lot of times there were bevy of medals that were missed.
Well, hey, do you want to stick around for a week and get your medal, or do you want to go home? I'm going home.
I'm going home every time. And quite honestly, some guys who say that they got their medal, they got them like 2 years later. Yeah, and they got them in the mail 2 years later. They were
and some of those medals were probably issued, like, I don't know, but like maybe the occupation medal, that might have been issued after they got out and not even on their records.
Victory medal was issued. A vast majority of them afterwards. It wasn't on their record. The Honorable Service lapel pin, the ruptured duck pin.
Right, the ruptured duck.
A lot of them never received or have never seen it. Or they've seen it but didn't know what it was. What it was is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I know. We do a lot of medals requests, and we use your office a lot on that. And you know what? Not just do our veterans love it, but sometimes their next of kin. You know, or the veteran wants to give it to their grandchildren or pass it on to their kids, and it makes a great memento. I mean,
the best experience I had was Don Maurer, his father Dale. He wanted to know what his father did. And everything, and we started looking up his father's World War II service. He was a Marine veteran. His father was in the Army, World War II. Find out he was part of the Ghost Army, Great Ghost Army. Oh. And here he lived locally. There was 2 that were local, and he used the sound systems and everything to make basically make it look like troop movements and everything.
They had the big blow up.
They had the blow up tanks and all of that. Got in contact with I think it's Mr. Bryan who wrote the book on it and everything. He had photos of Don's father, so we were able to provide him photos of his father, and his uniform, actually, in service during World War II. His entire unit photo. He was an E7 at that time, so we got that for him. And
I'd tell you,
not knowing anything to find out that
he was in that service.
Yep, and he watched the movie, and now he's actually going to Europe and actually taking the tour.
Oh, wow, taking the tour over there. That's cool. I'll tell you, just meeting some of the old-timers from World War II and Korea, and even Vietnam. I mean, they're just ordinary guys, and you start to read their records, and it's like, holy cow, man! You know, some of the stuff you've done is crazy.
Running straight into firefights with a fuel tank on the back. It's just...
Oh, yeah, the flamethrowers and stuff like that, yeah.
We had a veteran, Alfred, who his family knew nothing, and I presented his medals at his bed, at his house and everything, just based on the fact he couldn't get out anymore. But he had the Distinguished Service Cross. Right. He had all of these medals. I think he had 2 silver stars. And just reading the citations of what he ran into several firefights. Right.
The thing about it is, and it's been 60, 70 years. And when you talk to these guys, and a lot of them, I've talked to a lot of them with their family there. And for some reason, they'll open up to somebody like me or you that's a veteran. And their family will be like, I have never heard that story before. And, me and the vet, we're sitting there crying, we're in tears because of, what he's talking about. And the family's never heard the story.
And that's what I love about the Veterans History Project. I can get a lot of the veterans to actually talk about their story.
So tell me a little bit about the Veterans History Project.
That's through the Library of Congress.
Okay.
They want at least 30 minutes of recording or photographs or journal writings. And we do a lot of the video recording. Just sit down, interview the veteran, talk to them about their service.
And you take that on the road, too.
Yes, we take that on the road. In fact, Congressman Gonzalez is personally doing the interview on Wednesday up at Harbor Cleveland, the Coast Guard. But I'll go to different locations, and we'll set up 4, 5, 6 interviews in a day. We'll interview the veterans anywhere, any wartime service, whether they were stateside, they were overseas, they want all of it.
You just want to get their story.
Yep.
Yeah.
They want even Gold Star mothers, fathers. Family members that actually next of kin that have the letters, the documentation, the photos. They want that. All of that's preserved with the Library of Congress. You can actually go on loc.gov/vets, and you can search for, basically, if you are on Hill 185, you can search for Hill 185 in Vietnam and see other people that possibly served with you.
That have already done the
video. That have already done it and everything.
So is there video on there then?
There's videos on there. There's photographs on there. We found veteran family members on there when we were researching for a veteran, and basically pulled the unit, and there's photographs and everything.
Wow, that is cool.
So other people have uploaded them. A lot of times, unfortunately, when we find out the World War II veteran ends up passing, we'll hear back from them that those videos were played at the calling hours and everything.
So do you find it hard to get a group of guys together or gals together to do the interviews?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes they're very reluctant because they haven't talked.
Right.
They've gone their entire life, 60, 70 years without talking about
I never
what
said a word
happened.
about it, yeah.
Yep. And now, but once they start, you'll start it may be a slow 15-minute interview. We may be there hour plus.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's like the the honor flights. It's funny, when you get on those, at 6 o'clock in the morning when you're leaving, nobody's talking to each other. Nobody wants to be there. Nobody wants to go. And it's about lunchtime they start to open up. And the flight home from Washington with those guys and gals, you can't get them to be quiet. I mean, it's like they've known each other their whole life. It's amazing, to see that. So
I've gone on about a half dozen of the honor flights, and then I take the annual honor trip out of Shreve, which is a bus trip spend the entire weekend with them.
Oh wow, yeah, I've never did
and
the
everything.
bus trip
They see the monuments at nighttime, during the daytime, and they're connecting.
Right.
I guess is the best way to put it. Is veterans that don't come out very much may end up going on the trip, and then they have great friends that they still meet up with.
Right.
And,
it is a phenomenal, even for for the folks that go as the ushers and stuff and the caregivers. It is an amazing trip to just watch that group of people bond together in a matter of 16, 17 hours. So.
When a World War II veteran sees the monument for the first time,
Yeah.
and just
Yeah,
their eyes are just
open
like,
up. Yeah,
they built that for us.
yeah, it
And
is
then
pretty
tears
amazing.
just
Yeah.
start
So,
flowing.
tell me a little bit about. I know you've got this nonprofit program going down in Canton, and Canton, Stark County is much different than Medina County.
Yeah.
But I know you do a lot of good work down there. And tell me a little bit about the SAM Center and what SAM stands for, and what you do, and why you did it down there.
So the SAM Center is Serving Area Military Veterans Widows. We run a free commissary grocery store for veterans in need. We do lodging kits for homeless veterans transitioning to housing. We do an annual Veterans Resource Fair. It's between 600 and 800 veterans at it for a one-day event.
Do you have a lot of homeless veterans down there in Stark County?
There's over 30 on the by name list right now.
Wow.
We were down to 3 about 6 months ago, and then the list went above 50, and now it has 30 some on it.
Good. So there's a couple shelters down there too, right, that you guys work with?
Yeah. When I started working with the Veterans Housing Task Force, we had, this was 2012, we had 0 dedicated beds for veterans in Stark County. Now, probably by the end of this year, we'll have close to 100.
Wow, that's quite a difference. But with the large homeless population down there, you kind of...
And Stark VSC is working with community services right now to actually establish a shelter with the VA as well.
Right. Yeah, we've seen that. I mean, we don't have the homeless problem that Stark and other counties, surrounding counties, have in Medina. But when we do, because there is no homeless shelter in Medina, so there is a program for homeless folks. I've always said that it's the one thing that we probably don't do well in our office, because the few homeless folks that do walk into our office, we're always kind of like, okay, we got to run this drill again. We actually do have a drill written down on how we deal with that. And thank God we don't have that problem, but we try to take care of them the best we can. But without a shelter, we're usually using one of the shelters in Summit County. And they're not county specific, so they're veteran specific, really. But it is an issue. And I'm glad you got something going on down there to take care of all the folks.
It's grown. Started a number of years ago. I'm not there full time, of course. Kelly runs it and everything. She does a phenomenal job. I think the volunteers put in over 500 hours every single month.
Wow.
Running it. Then we even have a little commissary that's in the Cleveland VA next to the emergency room.
In
we have our own room.
Hospital?
Yeah, at Wade Park, where they have 3-day food bags, coats, hats, gloves, warming items, everything. And then we do 3-day food bags at several of the other VA facilities.
So does most of that stuff come in donations, or does it come in monetarily and then you guys go purchase it, or how do you do that?
Combination.
Okay, combination.
They have a
of both.
partnership with Akron Canton Food Bank, and then also just private donations.
Private donations.
A lot of it is just small donations of just people walking in. It was started as a community of believers coming together to assist veterans in need, and we're kind of a conduit for what happens.
Right.
So when the VA states they need something, Kelly looks at it and see if there's something going on in the community.
Right.
Because kind of a misnomer. I am the president and CEO, but I don't do anything day to day. Day to day, we actually have leadership and everything.
People on the ground.
I founded it.
Yep.
However, there's leadership that runs it.
People on the ground that see what's the heartbeat of what's going on in day-to-day issues.
Yep, and we have VA employees on the board. We have a judge on the board. We have different people on the board that can kind of identify problems, and we're agile enough to, whenever there's a problem that's out there, like we didn't have any guitar therapy or music therapy down in our area. So we hired a certified music therapist who's actually from Medina. Brenda comes down and she presents guitar therapy.
Down at the clinic
nights.
down there.
At the SAM Center.
Yeah, okay.
So we remodeled the first floor, so we have that. We're looking at a yoga program. There's a Bible study. Chaplain Piney has a Bible study now on Wednesday nights that he's bringing veterans together and just...
So you started this program on your own, more or less, well, with help, but really you reach out to different agencies and bring them together to help folks, kind of. Is that what I'm kind of getting?
Yeah. It was pretty much Sue, Mel, and I, and Joanne. I'm sorry, Nancy Jo. And Jeannie. we just sat there thinking, it's like, well, if we just had a place and everything, we could probably find the community members that would want to come forward and assist.
A lot of people
So like last year, we didn't even do a fundraiser, if that tells you anything. That's the community's love and support, is we're not actively out there in the community fundraising, but they're coming forward and they're walking in with donations and support. Every time we've needed something, we decide to move the commissary upstairs, and the first floor, it's like, you have that hope and prayer.
Right.
It's basically saying that we're going to move it upstairs. We still have to remodel and everything. Rebuilding Together called the very following week saying, hey, we have a $10,000 grant. We'd like to come in and remodel something for you. So they came in, put all new floors in, repainted, did everything. Just after that, Louisville Legion Post just sent a check over for just over $5,000.
Well, obviously, they know you're doing good work then.
Yep. And that paid for the guitars and the guitar.
So you work well. You work well with. I assume you work well with Deanne and the Stark County Veteran Service Office down there. Good.
Yeah, and Kelly communicates a lot with her, and their finance manager is actually on the board.
Good. So got a couple minutes left. I want to ask you one thing. So if you got any advice to a veteran who's seeking assistance from any agency out there, what would be the best advice you could give them? Or if they're having problems with, an agency that they can't get help from or can't get an answer from, what would you tell them?
Well, reach out to your congressional member, your member of Congress. They'll be able to connect you. But more importantly, before you have that problem, get involved with Veteran Service Organization, whether that be your American Legion Post, your VFW Post, and vets. Get involved in the community. Because once you're involved, you're connected, you're finding out about resources. You have a magazine that comes out.
Yeah, we have a newsletter.
That actually says different things that's available.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's probably 90% of the battle is just finding out.
Yeah, and we just do that so people know we're there and find, hopefully there's something interesting and that's helpful, but so that they come back and connect with us. That's what we want. And every county in the state has an office like ours. Use them. I mean, at least call them.
It's your best friend. It's free. You paid for it.
At least call them, because I've heard, well, they can't help me. Well, call them and see if they can. If they can't, then tune into someplace else, And
a lot of times you can connect people.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as you're reaching out to someone before it's in crisis mode, and everyone works well together.
Right.
We work well together. We work with the VA. We work with VA Regional. So I speak to the director a lot of times where it's a veteran has a problem. I can actually just shoot an email over to the director's office.
Well, I think the one thing, and I know you work for Congressman Gonzalez, but we're all in this to take care of veterans, and that's what we're really here for. It doesn't matter where you're at, on the spectrum. I mean, we just want to help people.
I tell people I get to wake up every day and help veterans. Like it's an amazing feeling because I'd volunteer for this.
It is very fulfilling.
One day I'll retire and I'll probably volunteering to do the same thing that I'm doing now.
And somebody wants you to do that because you know so much. So I ask everybody that's been on the show, if you ever had the chance to join the National Guard and serve your country again, or serve the veterans you're currently serving, would you do it again?
Oh, yes. Yeah. It
Bryan,
gave me so many opportunities.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
We'll see you next month on Salute to Service.
Welcome to Understood.org, a free online resource for parents of kids with learning and attention issues, with personalized recommendations, tools, and expert advice.